We know there's only one power of God unto salvation, and that's what the Lord Jesus Christ did on the cross of Calvary. When in full, he paid your debt and mine on the cross of Calvary. And we tell them that by putting their faith there, recognizing their need, and looking at what he did there on Calvary, God will do for them what all their prayers and consecration and everything else could never accomplish. And then that leads to all the other. Because unless you have the foundation, you can't build anything.
Those are memories that you'll never lose, because I was there when we walked around the grounds, and we realized that there probably were 30 or 40 others that wanted to buy the camp at that time. But George Zemer, who was the pastor of the Wisconsin Tabernacle, he was the man that called Doc and I when we were still over at Camp Awana. And he said, you've got to get over here. And we went over there, and we realized that we didn't really have money to buy a camp. And that was the miracle thing. When we talked about it, and she agreed that she wanted us to have the camp because we were going to do it for children. And that appealed to her, see? We were going to get this camp for $15,000. That was absolutely amazing that something like that could take place. As far as money was concerned, Doc said, about all I've got is $500. And she said, that's fine, because she says if I got any more money, my husband would drink it all up.
Well, I think one of the special moments that I remember back for many years was after breakfast every morning when the campers were all dismissed. The Doc would go over to the piano and begin to play the William Tell Overture. And all the pals and pioneers who never had much interaction with Doc would gather around him, and he was just as happy as could be playing for the pals and pioneers every single day.
It was the last night of camp. It was the award night. And I spoke. And Bill Hybels came up and said how much he enjoyed it.
Well, that time would be when Doc, at age 85, stepped down from being the director of camp, and a committee of men that included Art and Doc and Dick Sisson asked me to become the director of Camp Awana. That moment was the turning point in our family's life, as not only did I become the director, but God also gave me a wonderful wife who enabled me to become a full director that helped camp.
I don't know that I can pinpoint one specific time, but rather, if I look back, there was kind of a general sense of the concept of God's faithfulness, and His faithfulness over all the years that we were there. And His faithfulness would demonstrate itself in numerous ways and at various levels, whether it was with staffing, whether it was with financial needs, whether it was with bringing campers, whether it was with seeing campers make dramatic changes in their lives. And the opportunity to walk alongside of leaders, supporters, and campers during this entire time was just a wonderfully rich experience that the Lord allowed me to have.
On the first Saturday of Boys Camp 2003, we were checking in campers in the Longhouse when we received a phone call from Gloria Stern, the camp secretary. Yeah. She indicated that there was a Korean boy on the bus that had just left the center. The boy had just arrived 2 days earlier in the U.S., and he did not know any English, and he was going to be at camp for 2 weeks. There was a pioneer camper that had already checked in who knew how to speak Korean. I found him and explained our problem and asked him if he'd be willing to help this camper, to translate for him, to help with the program and activities and make sure he got where he was supposed to be. I told him that it might take away from his personal camping experience. He agreed. When the bus arrived, we met the new camper. Kim translated as we told him what was going to happen. From that point on, Kim took over and did a superb job in personally taking care of this new Korean friend. At the end of the first week of boys camp, the new Korean camper had learned some English, had made friends with a number of other campers, and was able to function quite well on his own from a program standpoint. Earlier that year, we had established a new award called the Latham Beacon Award to recognize campers who did something special at boys camp. Kim was the first recipient of that award.
Well, actually, I think back to when I was asked to consider being the director at Camp Awana, and I remember the last day that we were here that week, I went into the mess hall to get something, and no one was in there. The fans were going, lights were on, so I shut off the fans, shut off the lights. Yeah. And I remember in the stillness, the quietness, I said to the Lord, if you want us to come here as a family and you want me to be the director, we're willing. And I remember just that peace. We walked out of there, took 18 months or so, and then we came on staff here. And still I have those moments whenever I go into the mess hall. Just the other night, lights are on, fans are on, I shut them off, and I stop in the stillness. I look around the room and think about what went on that day. I look at Doc's picture and think of the heritage, and I say, Lord, we want to continue to honor you. We want to impact lives here at Camp Awana. Thank you for just giving me and my family this opportunity, and we're so blessed to be here.
I would like to see camp really major on reaching boys and girls with the gospel. And then as a result of reaching them and them coming back as campers over and over again, suddenly they become leaders. And now we're raising leadership as well. One of the joys I had this past summer was going up to camp and seeing probably 4 or 5 who were all alumni of camp. And today they are taking all of the adult places. They are now the leadership of camp. And that was very rewarding to me.
Get the best leadership possible. I think the lodge directors are the most important thing to great cabin leaders, great waterfront person, and outstanding cooks. If you have good cooks, a director of the camper's work is so much easier. It just eliminates all the complaining. So you don't have that to fight with.
The Barna Group has been conducting research on cultural trends and the Christian church since 1984. The results of the research indicate the following. Only 9% of born-again adult Christians have a biblical worldview. Their definition of biblical worldview is totally consistent with the doctrinal position of the Northside Gospel Center and Camp Awana. An even more disturbing statistic is that only 0.5% of American young people ages 18 to 23 has a biblical worldview. The research confirms that American Christianity is conforming to today's secular culture. The views of American young people are being shaped by TV, movies, the internet, social media, secular music, college professors, and their peers. I would like to see the Lord expand Camp Awana's ministry to Christian high schoolers and young people by teaching them the biblical worldview and influencing them to fully embrace it and live it out in their daily lives. Further, to be different than their secular friends and to become leaders amongst their peers and impact their generation with the gospel and for the Lord.
My desire would be to see a strong partnership between the Northside Gospel Center, which owns Camp Awana, and Latham Christian Camping, which operates Camp Awana, in which we would continue to together seek to keep Camp Awana as a place where Christ is first, where we can remember that Paul exhorted us in Romans 1 to first understand that we are a debtor to the Jew and the barbarian, to those that are wise and unwise, so that we might be ready to preach the gospel. And we can preach the gospel because we believe that we are not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God unto salvation to all who believe. And therefore, may that partnership lead us to envision camp in the future as we plan for new construction, remodeling, new programs, personnel, and together look forward to a great time in which the Lord will be glorified through the ministry of Camp Awana.
Well, certainly one of the things I would like to see the Lord do for the camp is keep it anchored in its primary mission, to spread the gospel clearly. We live in a time and age in which the gospel has been eroded on every front, the media, newspapers, etc. And kids today are coming with not a lot of exposure. The first exposure they may have to the Bible, to the concept that there's a God who actually loves them, may happen at Camp Awana. That being said, today's campers, families, or whomever the Lord brings to the property are coming at a very different place than people we had 10 to 20 years ago. And so may the camp and may the Lord empower the leadership there to meet the needs of this next generation and to understand how camp must change and mold itself to be as effective in its witness as it always has been.
We have to pray that we'll get really godly people up there that are not just good Christians, but they're people that really want to put their lives into those kids and make it happen. That they won't come up there and say, well, it's a nice place to be for a few weeks, but they want to come up here because, yes, God wants me up here. I think one of the verses I want to leave with you, and that's over in Philippians, I think the 3rd chapter says, forget all those things which are behind. Forget all those things. We're not living in the past. And he says, we're going to press now ahead to the mark that is before us and obey what God's wanting us to do. And that's why we're talking about the past, but really it's the future we're looking at right now. Because we have to remember that to God, the future is just as important to God as any of those blessings of the past. And we just have to believe, yes, God's going to continue to do miracles if we're in the place where we expect God to do them. And
we know that this is the Lord's camp, so we continue to ask Him, Lord, what do you want Camp Awana to be as we move forward in the 21st century? We will always preach the gospel message. It will always be a place where Christ is first. But what do we need to do with our programming? What do we need to change? Who are we trying to reach? What kind of staff do we need to add in order to move forward and make it what He wants it to be? And that's the question, is wrestling with what do we want, what does He want? And we want to make sure that we follow His will, because if the Lord isn't the builder of the house, the workers labor in vain. So I see great times ahead for Camp Awana. I'm excited. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of momentum, a lot of new campers, new families, new volunteers, new churches. We're getting phone calls. People are finding out about us word of mouth. They're finding out about us on Facebook, just doing internet searches. It's just really cool, making some great connections. And there's great days ahead. One of the major things, and we're talking about it at the 70th, is we need more staff. We need more full-time staff in order to handle the workload and really to grow as a camp.